we have Mr. Joe Sesso. I'm pronouncing that right, Joe?
Yep.
On our program. And Joe is a national speaker and sales director for Homes.com. He's also an author. He's got an amazing background, which we'll get into in just a second, but he's also just written a new book, which is one of the series, which is Secrets of Top Selling Agents. I think it just came out this weekend. So we're going to get into that a little bit. And welcome to the program, Joe. Before we get into the book and all that, kind of do us a little rundown of your background, just for people that maybe haven't met you on the road. I know you've spoken in front of tens of thousands of people, but tell us a little bit background about Joe.
Yeah. So born and raised in Chicago. I've been lived there. I've been a licensed real estate agent in Illinois for 20 years. So since the year 2000. So did that, was doing some house flipping up until the market crash. And when that happened, I held on to a lot of properties, some by accident. But from there, then I pivoted, and because I was doing a lot of speaking on investing, but I was recruited by Realtor.com, was their national speaker for 3 years. And then I left there in 2011, and then I went to Homes.com, and I've been there ever since, pretty much doing, starting in the same role, just as a national speaker. Now I'm the executive director of sales marketing, for Homes.com. So I've been there for 9 years this month. So pretty excited.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Now let's talk about your book series, because you've been a part of the Secrets of Top Selling Agents for many years, I know. And I've been fortunate enough to be on the program a few times, the webinars that they do, which are fantastic. And you converted a lot of that content into some book form, right? Yeah.
So here, how that came about was I would come on, and with Deb, I'd do the interviews with folks like yourself, the guests on the show, talking about different topics. So I was finishing up. This is 2014. I'm finishing up my MBA, and I said, man, what am I going to do with all this time on my hands? I've got 3 hours a night that I'm pretty much going to have freed up. And I started thinking about it, because I was on all of the Secrets episodes. I'd come on, I'd do the Homes.com product pitch, but also interview the guests on the program. And I started thinking, like, you know what? We have all this great content. We had, just the names on it. We had Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. We had Gary Keller, Dave Liniger, yourself. A lot of big names on there. And so, I said, I don't even know how many people actually know that they can go to an archive and actually watch all these webinars. But then I started thinking, do people have time to watch 10, 15 hours worth of content? So what I did was I took my favorite episodes, and I took the meat and potatoes from each one, and I wrote it into a book. Now, the first book was called Secrets of Top Selling Agents, Unlocking the Keys to Real Estate Success. That came out in 2017, hit Amazon #1 bestseller, which was great. So just started like last year, they started talking again, like, we want to do another Secrets book. And, we have so much content on our Secrets of Top Selling Agents website. I said, okay, I'll do it. But it's going to be completely different than the first book. And so that's what got the idea. And it got me really getting excited, because I went now for really create like different content, completely different from the first one, so that it wouldn't be like, oh, I'm just getting an updated version, completely different. And that after about a year of research and 4 different drafts we've written on it, going through the whole COVID-19 thing, we finally have got it, and it was just put out on Amazon on Saturday. So very excited, and really want this to hit the bestseller list as well.
Love it. We're going to promote it all the ways that we can possibly promote it. So let's talk about, you're looking at a tremendous amount of content you're trying to fit into a book.
Yeah.
And so how do you pick and choose? Which ones are the most popular? Which ones most watched? What did you do?
Well, what I picked for this time, what I wanted to do was, and the first time was like a lot about was, okay, you put a name like Barbara Corcoran on in your book, you put Gary Keller in the book, people are going to buy it because they follow these big names. But in this one, I really wanted to go with a lot of substance, like really like, okay, it's not just about the name. The name is important. They got followings, but this is about some really good stuff. So I have what I call the 4 cornerstones of this book. And in the first book, not to take anything away from the first book, because there's some really good content in there. Dave Liniger talks about him. He's come back from a near-death experience, and Gary Keller talks about The One Thing, his best-selling book. Barbara Corcoran talks about Shark Tank and how she made it. But in this book was more like, okay, as an agent, realistically, what am I going to, why did I get in this business? What am I going to encounter? So the 4 cornerstones. The first one is something that every agent needs to have before they can even think about being successful. And that is the proper mindset and echoing the habits of super producers. So I have Michael Maher in this, covering that with his 7 levels of production. I have Larry Kendall in mindset about ninja selling, Tom Ferry talking about that. That's the first one. The second one is lead generation, because when we poll agents, like, what are you looking for most? And I always talk about lead generation. So the lead generation part was pretty interesting, because we started looking at other ways that people produce or generate leads, but we wanted to take a different twist on it, because you could say, you can generate leads from Fsbos and expireds and this and that. But what I really liked, about your chapter in particular, as an agent, I was a Fsbo agent, and and I have some questions for you too, because there's something I'm very, very curious about. That you hit the nail on the head with your chapter, and I thought that is something that people, if they just do a couple things, it can completely be a game changer for how they generate leads. So I have a chapter on Fsbos from you. I have a chapter on, it's called Make $50,000 at Your Next Open House from Sherri Johnson. So I cover that. I cover farming with the lab coat agents. So we're talking about all these, and then Tom Ferry, different lead generation tech. So that's the second one. The third one is real estate investing. I think a lot of people get in this business to invest, and unfortunately, very few can actually invest. And so, they want to do it. They love real estate. They're passionate about it, but they just don't buy properties for whatever reason. A lot of times it has to do with financial. So I put up a couple chapters, a couple of our episodes that were based on that. Dirk Zeller talking about using, he's also from Oregon, right? So talking about real estate investing, setting up a self-directed IRA or SEP plan that you can use then to buy real estate. I also have Linda McKissick. She owns she's with Keller Williams, has 87 properties, 17 rentals, vacation rentals. And so, okay, what are they doing? How did they get started? What do they recommend? I put that in there. And then the final one, and then the final one is team building a team, not just team building, but actually building a team. Like everybody, the big buzzword is teams. And I know a lot of agents, they're good sales people, but they're not, they need to learn to be good managers and good good business owners, because they're really managing a business. So Lee Brown and Linda McKissick talk about building Tom Ferry too, about building a team. Who do I hire first? Who's the first person I should be hiring for my business? How do I pay them? What should the ad look like in the paper? Should we do personality tests or not? So those are really the 4 cornerstones that people seem to ask about the most. So I put these all in there. They're all based off of actual Secrets of Top Selling Agents webinars. And that's how I decided, Jim, what went into this book.
Love it. So people can right now today buy this on Amazon.com. They can download it as a PDF.
Yep, Amazon.com. They can buy it. It's as a matter of fact, I can share the link with you, and then you could put, if you want, you can put it
on the notes down below so everybody can see it, or above.
Absolutely. Yeah, they can they can just go to The other one is they do it on it's for some reason it wasn't working on mobile, but on desktop, go.homes /secrets book 2, number 2. So Secrets Book 2. So go.homes /secrets book 2.
Everybody should read it, I think. So let's get into Fsbos for a second, because you were very gracious and put me in the book. So I'm happy to answer any questions and talk a little bit about Fsbos for a minute. So
first of all, I know people are so scared, it seems like, to go to Fsbos, and I don't know why. And I remember early on in my real estate career, it was a for sale by owner, and I was doing a ride along with an agent, and we walked up to the house, and there was just like this tension. Like, oh, you're a realtor, and all of a sudden, like you could just tell that they were thinking, okay, well, they're going to be waiting to sell me, and there was never any follow up from that agent. And I just remember thinking that there's got to be. I was looking at the statistics, and there's got to be a way that these get converted. And when I saw your episode, because it brought back a lot of memories, and it said, you know what, this is how it should be done. And I'm just glad that you really talked about that, because so many people, when they hear the word, they hear, oh, Fsbos, or they hear, expired. Oh, yeah, that's old hat. We don't do that anymore. But the approach you took was great. Now, my question for you is this. You said that you maybe you know what I'm going to ask you, because You said you were at a awards ceremony and you were coming off the stage. There was a guy coming off the stage. He accepted an award as the top sales guy. And you asked him, you said, what do you do? How did you do it? And he said Fsbo's. Well, who was the guy?
It was Brian Combs, and Brian worked in the Vancouver, Washington market. I don't know if he's still practicing or not. This was many years ago. I've been in the business 31 years. So Brian was the #1 salesperson for ERA back in the day, the old franchise ERA. It's still around. Shouldn't say it's old. Still alive and kicking. And so that's where I met Brian. And Brian and his brother Sean were both in the business. And that's where I learned his stop, drop, and knock technique.
I love it. So what I did, what I started doing, I started, when I dedicated myself full time, I told my wife, said, I'll give you 6 months to make it in real estate. And if not, you have to go out and get a job. And that was pressure. So I'm sitting around the first couple of days. Everybody's just sitting around drinking coffee and they're waiting for the phone to ring. This is back in 2002 now. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I can't sit still like these guys and do this. So I was going through Realtor magazine. And there was a guy in there and saying, download my free Fsbo system. So it was like 40 some odd pages long. And I had to use, back then the printers weren't as great as they are today. So I totally wore out the ink on the printer, printing this thing up. But his name was, I forgot his name was Brian or whatever, but because it sounded very similar. His approach was very similar. And so I started applying that. And before you know it, I was getting appointments left and right. And And the fortune really was in the follow-up. It's one thing to go into that. And Jim, when I saw your episode, I said, this episode has to be in the book, because what happens is I think people go there and they expect I'm coming out with a listing the first day. And that's just not even, that shouldn't even be, and you say on the webinar, that shouldn't even be the idea. The idea is, I'm going in there to make contact with this person. I'm going in there to find out, hey, would you consider listing with a broker sometime? If you do, could I be considered? And being able to really, get that FaceTime and build that rapport with them. Yeah. I think so many people, all they want to do is they want to send mailers or they want to, send emails out, and they fail to do these things. So when I saw your, it brought back a lot of parallels. When I saw your episode, I said, that's got to be in my book.
Yeah. So my approach with first sale owners, for those listeners that are listening or watching, is exactly what we're talking about here. It's very simple. All we're doing is making contact, and the way we bring people's kind of defensives down, because there is a little bit of tension when you call a Fsbo for the first time, is the magic sentence is, hey, Jim Remley with ABC Real Estate. Listen, I saw your ad on Facebook's Marketplace or Craigslist. I want to let you know I'm not calling to list your house. This is the magic words. And I do respect your decision to sell on your own. Just a quick question. I'm working with a handful of buyers that are looking for a home just like yours. I'm just wondering if you'd be open to let me come by and take a look at what you have and see if it's the right fit. And that's pretty much the script that unlocks, 80% of those doors. So actually, as you probably learned, Joe, when you start this process, it's actually pretty easy to set appointments. The hard part is closing those appointments, taking them from here over to here. And so when you start doing this, everybody's amazed at how easy it is. And then it's the process of getting them all the way over to here. What was your process as an agent?
That was so like you said, getting the appointment was easy. So what I would do is call them on the phone, and I said to them, hey, my name's Joe Sesso. I'm with XYZ Realty. I just want to say, this is I market in your area, and I have a steady stream of buyer leads that are coming in from various sources that I'm doing through marketing, and I really want to be able to show them all the inventory in the area. And I notice your house is for sale. You're selling it by owner. What I was wondering is, first of all, are you willing to cooperate if I can bring you a buyer? And so I love how you say on your webinar that don't just push for the buyer side commission, because you end up doing all the work. So I would, what I'd say is that same thing. I'd say, hey, if I bring somebody, at least you willing to cooperate? And they said, yeah, I'm willing to pay X percent. And most of the times they were willing to cooperate, because at this point, they just want to get it sold. Now, I never agreed to the percentages. Like you said, don't agree right away. Just be like, hey, we can talk about that later. Let me just look at the property first. So then, getting the appointment, going in there was the easiest part. And then for me then was just building rapport, but making sure that before I left, I asked the question like, hey, would you consider, much longer would you go before you consider listing with somebody? And asking that question is critical, because so many times I was on there. I would, some people would say, oh, I'm never going to list it. I'm never, whatever. And they end up listing it anyway. But some people, honestly, I had a number of ones that would say, I'm going to give it to the end of this weekend, I'm getting fed up with it. I'm going to give it to one more week. And then I knew that, okay, there we go. We're rolling along. And that was the really big thing for me. And then once I was able to determine, what their timeline was, then I would, follow up accordingly. And this was back in the day where, you use the newspaper to find all the Fsbos and everything. So I know today we have so many other resources out there, but that was typically what I did.
And so what was your expectations? I mean, did you find that you would get listings within that kind of 4 to 6 week window? Is that generally
absolutely in the 4 to 6 week window. So what I did was after I would leave the house, it was always about value. So for me, it was let me wait a few days. And I'd ask for one of their brochures and I'd send it. And this is another thing you talk about, which by the way, I put all this stuff in the book. So I put your scripts that you put on there, everything you put in your episode is in the book. So some great scripts, great follow-up scripts. But I would ask for their brochure, take a look at it, and then of course I would say, okay, well obviously there's a lot of room for improvement here because most of them are not graphic designers. So what I would do is a couple days later, I'd send them a thank you card first of all. Thank you very much for the time, handwritten card, and then every 2 or 3 days I'd send something else. I wanted to make sure I was top of mind with them. So I would send a lead paint disclosure, and I would say, hey, look, I noticed I didn't see this in your house when I was there. This is required for every transaction. A little post-it note. It's required for every transaction. If you need help, filling this out, let me know. But this is something that you need to know how to do. And people in my office would be like, "Why are you sending? You're making it easier for them to do their job." I said, because first of all, if you think that they're going to sell their house now because they have a lead paint disclosure form, you're out of your mind. It's not going to help sell the house. So, but what I'm doing is I'm providing the value because even though they're probably not going to sell their house, at least when it comes down to saying who should I choose, they're going to say that guy Joe did more to try to help me sell it by owner than anybody else did, and that's how I got most of the Fsbo listings doing that stuff.
I love it. I think another strategy right now in our market, that there's a couple strategies I think are really working well for my students is one is text-based strategies, which when I was coming up, we didn't have text-based strategies, but now they work really well. And so texting the Fsbo instead of just calling, because what happens is 52% of all Fsbos now are millennials that are what we call first-time home sellers. And so when they see a number that they don't recognize, they won't even pick up the phone. So, by texting them, you get ahead of the curve and you get into conversation. And what I love, another technique really quickly, is the video-based text. So you send a quick video, just say, hey, I just drove by your house over at 123 Johnson, see it's for sale by owner. Would you consider allowing me to show it if I can bring a buyer by? And, it's a whole different experience. And that can be scaled up for teams too. Where you just tape a generic message and then your team members shoot it out, but it's you on the message. So there's so many ways that we can be creative today that we couldn't be, before. Also texting, like you're talking about the lead-based paint. Before we physically send it, now we can digitally send it. So it's such a different world that we live in, but we can adapt and we can get better and I think make ourselves much more useful and helpful to the client.
Absolutely. So the other thing what I really thought was just awesome. And this was something I did not use back in the day. But I thought was, wow, this is really, really, really cool. Legacy for sale by owners. Never even heard that term before your webinar. Mm-hmm. So, tell me about that, because I think when you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's such a no-brainer. Yet I bet you so many agents just pass up on these. So, what is a legacy?
Legacy. In fact, I was just talking about this morning with some of my students. Legacy for sale by owner is, for sale by owner puts their house in the market in January, February, let's just say March, April, and they have a moment where they want to sell, but then, something comes up, life happens, and like, we didn't sell it, so let's just stop worrying about it. So it was on Craigslist for a minute, it was on Facebook Marketplace for a minute, or more than likely too, they put themselves into some for sale by owner websites, because there's a ton of those out there for free they can list themselves on. Places like owners.com and forsalebyowner.com and even Zillow. And so when they list themselves there, they think about Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, but they forgot where they put themselves on these other websites, and they kind of stay out there forever. So as an agent, what I'm doing is I'm farming those websites. I'm looking deep into those, and I'm looking for people that had their home on the market a few months ago, And that's the legacy for sell by owner. No one's prospecting them. No one's seeing them. There's no sign in the yard. There's no ad in the paper. There's no ad on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. But they're there if you dig deep enough. And that's a great contact to have. That's like golden nuggets, because they definitely will circle back to selling at some point. So that's what we mean by that. Another hot topic right now, too, which has changed over the last few years, is that there are for sale by owners almost in every MLS system, which is really interesting to me. So there's limited representation listings or no representation listings, and that's basically where you pay a company $500 or $600 or $300, $295 to list your property in the MLS, but there's no representation. So you know that this is happening when the remarks say, present all offers directly to the seller. That's a classic sign that, they're not being represented. So those, if you find companies that are doing that, I would search all their listings and I would reach out and I'd make an appointment with the seller and I'd just say something like, hey, I noticed you have your house in the market. I didn't see it on tour. I didn't have a chance to look at it yet. Just trying to preview some new listings this week for my clients. Would you mind if I come by and take a look? I'd really prefer if you're there, by the way, so you can show me the house. They say yes. Now I go over and I treat them just like a for sale by owner, but I add one question in the beginning. I just say, so I noticed that you listed with Flat Fee Real Estate or whoever. Are you being represented, or was that just a fee to go into MLS? If they say they're being represented, I'm hands off because I don't want to violate my fiduciary duties. But if they say, no, I just paid a fee to be in MLS, I say, oh, okay, I understand. And then I go into I just treat them like a for sale by owner. Those are what I call for sale by owners that are hiding in plain sight. Nobody's recognizing those are for sale by owners and targets for us. So that's an exciting market too.
Now that is, but now and I know when you said that in a webinar, because this is in the book when you mentioned this, and I put it in there. It's almost like, now I know this is where some agents, and I'm sure they get nervous and you probably start throwing up some, hey, I don't know if that, yes, you see those for sale by owners, it's limited representation, and this is where basically I'm throwing it up on there and you're doing all the work, the buyer agent does all the work. So is it okay if they say, yeah, because if I'm putting on the MLS, aren't I signing some type of agency contract or no?
It depends on the MLS system. So you got to define that with your MLS. If you're using this strategy, I definitely talk to your principal broker, your supervising broker about it. But in a lot of MLSs, people can check no representation or limited, which would be an LR, limited representation, which just basically means you're just putting it on MLS and they're not representing the seller. That's why asking that question right out of the gate is really, really important. So, you definitely, it's a comfort level and you got to make sure that you're meeting your own brokerage standards, your MLS standards. But believe me, there's a ton of MLSs across the country where for sale by owners are basically allowed in by being just paid a fee.
Yeah, that would be important, because I would hate to be like the buyer agent. And then here I am doing the work for the buyer side and the seller side, because, the person even though it appears on an MLS, oh yeah, look, it's listed there. The broker's not doing anything except getting a flat fee just for throwing it up there. To me, that's a lot more work. It definitely, yeah. And I like how you say, you do mention that about like when you do make contact with them, and you ask them, is your home getting a lot of offers on it? And then you say, hey, I think one of the reasons why it might not be getting the activity that you think it should be getting is because the way you have it listed. The buyer brokers know that they're going to have to do all the work for half the commission.
Right.
And so I think when you say that, to explain that to them, it really does put it in perspective. I mean, I would think as a seller, I wouldn't even think about that. I'd be like, oh, I'll put it on there. And then when somebody tells me, hey, I'm not only doing the work for my buyers, but you're expecting me to do all the work for you and walk you through, because your broker's not really a broker and they're just kind of like just throwing up there. That would be like, to me, it'd be like, oh my gosh,
the wake up call.
No wonder why it's not selling. And I think that just by positioning it that way was genius. So that we definitely talk about that in the book, because I really like that. I really like that technique. It's something that I never would have thought. I think a lot of agents don't even think about either, just because they assume, oh, it's on the MLS, it must be already listed with somebody.
Another technique right now, because we're in this really weird market where we have the lowest inventory levels basically in history. And so what happens with some sellers is they get nervous that they're not going to be able to find replacement property. And so it's a great opportunity for sell by owners is to have that conversation, and don't treat them as a seller, treat them as a buyer going in. And I love this concept. This is my favorite one, by the way, where you see an ad, no matter where it's at, and it says principals only, or it says, agents only. Those are the ones you call for, or excuse me, no agents, right? No agents, principals only. Those are the ones you call first, and I say, hey, listen, I see you said no agents, principals only. I totally understand. I'm not calling to actually ask you about your listing. I'm really calling to ask you about where you're going to go next. Are you staying local? Are you moving out of the area? And they'll be like, oh, we're going to, move to Nevada. We're going to move to Florida. Oh, great. And so that's the reason why I was calling. I'm a relocation specialist. I'm just wondering if you've chosen your next agent, because I can really help you hone in on a good agent where you're headed if you're interested. Or they say flip it and they say, well, no, we're looking to do a buy local. Oh, what if your home sells tomorrow? Have you already identified your next home? Because the market's really moving fast. I'd love to work with you as a buyer's agent. And you just go after them at a different tack. Even if it's not successful, it's opening the door. And now I can say, oh, by the way, since I got you on the phone, I'm not asking you to list your property, respect your decision to sell on your own. Would you be okay if I brought a buyer by your house? And now I'm already in conversation, but I've opened the door from a back door, which is much more comfortable than the front door sometimes.
Yeah, that's such great techniques. I mean, those are really some awesome ideas. And what I also like, Jim, is that you really break it down really simple. You put like in 4 steps, and your first step was make contact, and you've shown so many different ways to do that. First of all, sources of how where to look to make contact, but also just the takeaway is, I think, in that one is you got to get FaceTime. You got to be face to face with somebody. That's how you stand out from the competition. And so for me, it was like I was thinking, well, what can an agent say today? To get in the door. And I'm thinking, like, just from a homes.com perspective, say, for example, they invested in a zip code that was in the area that they work in. And I could call somebody up, a Fsbo in that zip code, and say, hey, I just want you to know I specialize in this area. I'm doing specific marketing in this area, target marketing in this area, and I am getting a steady stream of buyer leads coming in through some of my marketing efforts that I'm doing. And I want to show, most of the people who come in to look at a property don't buy the first property they see. So I want to be able to show them other properties. And that is a great way to be able to get in the door. It's leveraging your neighborhood expertise for that specific zip code, but also giving them a real good reason to say, oh, yeah, no problem. Come on in, take a look at it, and hopefully you can bring a buyer for me soon. I really want a buyer. That's, I think, the big takeaway from making contact. And then building rapport. I think then now I start saying as an agent, okay, Jim, I get to the house, I got the appointment set up. They open the door. I'm going to walk through and take some pictures and take some notes of the property. But what when you say build rapport, what should I be saying to them? What are we talking about when we're in the house? So
that's a great question.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really what I call a vesting strategy. And the vesting strategy is I want them to get invested in the relationship they're building with me as a realtor. I want them to get so vested that they don't want to put that time into another realtor, because the one thing that we all don't have enough of is time. And so Fsbos are no different. So when I'm in the house, the first thing I do is I'll say, hey, great. So thank you so much for letting me come by. If you don't mind, I'm just going to take a few notes while I'm walking through the house. And I got my notepad in front of me. And just please give me a chef's tour. I don't know what a chef's tour is, but I like to use the language. And then I let them walk me through the house. Now, as we're going, I'm asking why, when, where, how questions. So tell me, what's making you guys move? Why are you selling? How long have you guys owned the house? What have you done since you've lived here? What improvements have you made? What's been your favorite part of living here? Where are you guys moving to? So all these are these W questions, except with the exception of the H question, is really designed to have an emotional response, or it's an open-ended response at the very least. And so that open-ended response becomes conversational. It's not yes or no, it's a conversation. And what I'm trying to do is build rapport and trust. So I'm going to peel the onion. If they say we're moving to Colorado, I don't leave it at that. I say, oh, what's the magnet for Colorado? Why are you heading that way? So we got a son lives out there. Oh, really? How long does he live there? Did he grow up in the house? And you just get into conversation and you drill deeper and deeper and deeper. You peel that onion more and more and more. And pretty soon you're in a free-flowing conversation. That's what the definition of rapport and trust is. I'm in a free-flowing, natural conversation. I've moved away from the scripts and we're just in conversation now. And that's what it's all about. So that's been my technique over the years, and it's worked beautifully.
And then when you're leaving there, which is great. I mean, I think if realtors break it down in that way, just using those exact same questions. It's questions that sellers have probably gotten a number of times from prospective buyers, and so these are normal questions. These aren't going out of the realm of what would be a normal question. And then, of course, I think as you leave, you mentioned like you'd ask about what their intentions would be, or if would they give how would you close that out as you're walking out of the house?
Yeah, that's the great question. So as you're leaving, this is what happens: is agents make these appointments and then they don't close, and then they say, "Oh, Fsbos don't work." It's actually that their technique is not working. It's not that Fsbos don't work, because Fsbos, I've listed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Fsbos in my career. So they absolutely do work, and they're one of the fastest paths to creating what I call now business. But as I'm leaving the house, I'll say, "Hey, I promise you I wasn't going to ask you for your listing, and I'm not. I respect your decision to sell on your own. But I do have a quick question." So if I'm role playing this with you, Joe, I'd say, "But I do have a quick question, Joe. Do you think, so if you're not successful selling on your own, do you think at any point you might hire a realtor or work with a realtor?"
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely. It's not something that we're hoping to sell it, but we'll. It's something that we would definitely consider. Maybe the next few weeks to a month.
All right, cool. That's what I was going to ask. That was going to be my next question: how long you might give it. But listen, if you don't mind, I'd love to be somebody to interview if you get to that point. I hope you sell it, honestly. But if you don't sell it, and I'm going to try to bring a buyer. If I have a buyer, I'm going to bring them over. But if you don't sell it and you want to go full marketing and really expose it to the 1,500 agents in our community, within 24 hours, I'd love to be a person that you interview for the job. So if you don't mind, I'll just stay in contact with you and just make sure it's still available every week, so I know I can keep it on my list. And then I will close it out by using that Columbo technique. And the Columbo technique is I'm leaving the door open to come back. And so I'll say something like, and since I've already been here, let me ask you, would you be interested in seeing the 10 other properties that people are probably going to look at when they look at yours? Because you have a peer group, and the average buyer looks at 10 homes over 10 weeks. So they're not just looking at yours, they're looking at 9 others. So you need to see what those are to see how competitive you are. Would you like me to send those 10 competing properties over to you so you can see what they look like?
Yeah,
nobody
sure.
can say no to that.
Hey, exactly. No, that to me, that is great, because I think what you're doing is you're kind of not only and I mean, who wouldn't want to know what they're competing against? I mean, I think when you frame it like that, it's like, okay, yeah, my house hasn't sold. Why is it not selling? Who's it up against? And being able to share that. I think the other thing it does is at least it starts saying, oh, some of these are priced lower than mine and they're still not selling, or they are selling. Maybe they are selling, and maybe that's the reason why. And it might help, because they might still be resistant to bring down the price of their home. But when they list with you, you could say, hey, I was showing you these properties. You want to know why they were selling? Is because they were they were priced better. And I just think it's with the way you do that it's a great way to conclude a meeting at the house with somebody where you've done that tour, you've built rapport. And I think what you've done now is you've done a great job of opening the door to what you're calling step 3, which is providing value. So that's one thing about sending that list over is providing value. What other examples would you say that you recommend for providing value to a Fsbo?
So one of the things that we try to do is we try to differentiate ourselves, right? That's one of the things that we coach to in our coaching system over at eRealEstateCoach.com, is we're looking for ways to be different than every other realtor, because they are going to come into contact with other realtors, right? So we got to know that. So we have to say, how am I going to be different than every other realtor? So one of the ways that we do it is we'll say, hey, listen, it might be helpful for you to see what our marketing plan is as a realtor, because you might be able to model something that you can use as a for sale by owner. So I'm going to send you over, if you don't mind, I'll send you over the 25 things that I do for every one of my clients when I list their home. So it's called my 25-point internet marketing campaign. And it'll give you just maybe some ideas that you can implement yourself before you list with a realtor. And then that's one value point. Another value point is I'll say, we do something different than every other realtor you might have talked to. We do something, I'm sure you've been offered a CMA. We do something called a TMO. And my TMO is a total market overview. It's a complete 360-degree view of not just your home, but the entire real estate market and what's happening at a global scale, at a macro scale, and then at a hyper-local scale in the marketplace. So we'll give you a whole different sense of the market than just your standard kind of CMA. So included in that, by the way, is some search engine pricing strategies that really no one talks about, price band marketing that no one else talks about. Everybody's talking about comp-based pricing, but I look at it a whole different way. So what I'm doing is I'm really separating myself from the competition now with with what we call our TMO product, which is really separating, and nobody else is doing it.
TMO sounds really good. But you also mentioned in the book, or in your webinar, and it was also in the book, you mentioned a Fsbo Kit.
Yes.
What would you put in a Fsbo Kit?
So it's another, we call that the helping hand approach. So when I'm talking to you, either as a script going in or during our conversation, I'll say, so Joe, one thing I put together for people that are selling privately like yourself is a Fsbo Kit. It's a for sale by owner kit. It doesn't cost you anything. I just give it to everybody I come into contact with, just as my thank you of letting me come by today. And here's what it has. It has some sample flyers. It has a list of all the local lenders in town, because when you do get a buyer that comes in that doesn't have a lender, you might want to call a couple lenders and get a rate sheet so you can refer them over, and they'll be able to see some loan programs that will fit your home. Have a list of handyman and contractors to come over, maybe and spiff some things up or improve some things so you get higher dollar prices. We've got also a sign. I'm going to give you a sign. I noticed you got one sign, but I've got a little bit of a bigger sign for you if you want to use it. I'm going to give you a post even to use with it, and a couple of directional signs too to use. People are always mind blown when I say the sign. They're like, you give a for sale by owner sign, are you crazy? But on the sign, it'll have my logo and my name, and it'll say, provided by, courtesy of, Jim Remley, ABC Real Estate. No phone number, because I'm not going to represent that it's my listing. I'm just providing a sign. And it will say sign provided by or sign courtesy of. Now when any realtor drives by that house, they'll like, crap, Jim Remley's been there already. Game over. we're not going to get a call on it. It's like a waste of time. He's already been here. Or worse yet, they call and make an appointment. They drive up, they get out of their car, and they're like, he's already been here. Because they know I'm going to take the listing. It's like, might as well give up now.
I love that. I love that. So, with those kits, I think this comes back to what I was saying earlier on. You might have colleagues that say, wait a minute, Jim, you're going to help them, market their home. You're giving them a kit they can use. It has signs in there and this stuff. You're going to help them sell a home, and you're not even going to get paid on it. And so, it kind of falls back to what I was talking about earlier on. Why people when people question me is that you're bringing the value there, and I don't think just putting a sign in the ground is going to help them necessarily sell the house if it's not priced right. And giving the kit provides value that no one else is offering. So they're thinking, but if Jim did this for me, when I was selling by owner with no financial obligation to pay him anything. Yeah. Just think about what he could do, what he would do, the level of service I would get from him if I actually did hire him. Is that why you do it?
Yeah, and here the numbers behind this are really telling. So, the Realtor organization for the last 20 years has studied for sale by owners. There's a deep data on this, and actually, 92% of for sale by owners will end up working with the Realtor. 9 out of 10. So if I gave out to all 10 of these for sale by owners my for sale by owner kit, 9 of them are going to list their homes. I just want to make sure they're listing with me. So my odds are really strong in my favor that they are going to end up working with me as a client, as long as I'm providing max value. I want to outvalue every single person in the market so that they don't even think about using anyone else. And that's really what it's all about. And you're right. The flip side is every person we're talking to, even if they go for sale by owner, has the ability to refer us clients and refer us buyers and refer us their families and their friends. So it's still also, even if I don't sell their home and they do sell it on their own, maybe I'll get a referral out of it.
That really does set you apart from the competition out there. The final step you said was the follow-up. And we heard the saying, the fortune is in the follow-up, but I think it really rings true for Fsbo. So how do you go about following up with your, after you've left the house?
So this is really important. So what happens with a lot of agents is they get high on for sale by owners. Maybe they listen to a webinar like this, or they listen to a podcast, they read a book, and they're like, I'm going to do for sale by owners. And they'll be high on it for a week or two, and then they fall off. Well, here's what happens is you have to commit for 4 to 6 weeks. If you're starting a Fsbo campaign, you cannot quit for 6 weeks. You have to let go of outcome for 6 weeks and just say to myself, I can't expect any kind of outcome for 6 weeks, because that's the natural incubation period. Now, when I start going after these on day one, that means I'm not expecting a listing day one, because I won't get one. I'm not expecting it for 6 weeks, but I have to stay in contact with every for sale by owner every week. And here's why. Because 70% of the time, the for sale by owner is going to list with the first person, the first realtor, to make contact after they made the decision to list. So if I contact them day one, that's great. But if in week 4 is when they actually decide to list and the next realtor comes and talks to them, that realtor's got a 70% chance of getting a listing. And the reason is people want easy. People want it to be at the ZMOT. The ZMOT is the zero moment of truth. They want you to be standing there next to them and be at zero moment of truth. I'm ready to buy. Boom, I'm here to help you, right? I got to be standing there with them. So what do I need to do? Every week I got to be in contact with them. So my call to them every week is really simple. It's basically the same. I'm always offering value, some value piece. But in addition to that, I'm updating them on the market. So what I'll say is, hey guys, just wanted to check in, see where you're at with the house. Have you had any interest? How's it going? Did you get it sold? They'll fill me in. I'll say, listen, I want to give you a couple of just updates on your neighborhood. So there's been 2 new listings that hit the market this week. There's been 1 that went pending, and there's been 1 that sold. Now, I'm going to shoot these over to you so you see where you're at competitively. But these 2 that came on the market are a little bit worrisome for you because they came under your list price. So I just want to make you aware of that that could be somebody that somebody looks at when they're looking at those 10 listings. So check it out, see what you think. By the way, I've got some of their value piece, and then I give it to them. And I'm here to help. If you have any questions, you just shoot me a call. And that's it. And I can do that through email. I can do it through text, but I prefer to be on the phone with them talking to them. That's my
Yeah, that is great. Now, the other thing I really like about what you do here in this part is because this is something that it makes perfect sense, and everybody should be doing this. But I haven't really heard it on other webinars. But you talk about putting together a success portfolio. And that's something like if you have a house and you do an amazing video on it, it's like you don't want to just say, oh, that just when the house sells, I never use that again. Can you talk a little bit about the success portfolio?
Yeah, that's great. So a successful portfolio, different than a listing presentation. A listing presentation kind of takes people through the process cycle and shows them what they can expect, what they need to do to get ready for sale. The success portfolio, if you think about it like an architect, a photographer, a wedding planner, that's where they're showing off what they've actually done. So you're showing pictures, you're showing flyers, you're showing video, you're showing social media posts that have created success, that have created a sale. And that is, before and after pictures of staging, before and after pictures of curb appeal changes. And, you're doing all kinds of fantastic lighting changes with marketing pieces and really laying out how you're helping people market their home and get more money for their home. Some of the best examples are showing, hey, this is how the house looked as a for sale by owner. This is how it looked after I got a hold of it with my marketing. This is how a house looked though when it was expired. This is how it looked when I took over the marketing. And you just walk people down the kind of the aisle of this is what we're giving them. And what this does is it visually excites people. People learn through 3 different methods: audio, kinetic, and visually. And so we want to appeal to all of those things if we can. And so we want to not just be talking, but we want to be showing people things, like dealing out things. We want to be giving people visuals, and we want people completely immersed in what we're able to offer.
That's great. I would say that it makes, when you say, oh yeah, architects, obviously if I'm going to hire an architect, I want to see their work. I want to see what they've done. If I'm going to hire a photographer, show me your work. I'm not going to have you just, take wedding pictures, and not knowing what you've done before. But as a real estate professional, being able to go in and show them things that you've done. I mean, I know a guy that does, they list $2 million homes, and he actually they have their own video crew on staff, and they have high-end cameras, and they're doing, they actually have hired actors to do some of these shoots for some of these higher-end properties. And it's like, and I asked him, why do you spend all this money on this? And he's like, I look at it as the best marketing tool ever, because what I do is once I'm done with these, we don't just throw out these videos. When we're on a listing presentation, we're showing these videos and showing another, multi-million-dollar house. This is what the level of, this is the level of attention. This is the level of marketing that we do for homes. And that told me, wow, that's exactly it. And really as an agent, I mean, to show off your past work and some of the things that you've done marketing wise, advertising wise, it's a no-brainer, but so few people actually do show off their successful portfolio. So Jim, I thought that was something that also was essential to be in the book because of how good it was. So much. And I do love, what I do love about it is this, and this is a direct quote from you, and it's in the book, it's on your webinar. And you say this, it's all about the conversation. 90% of a seller's decision to list with you is about them liking you. And you do this by building rapport, building trust, adding value, giving them good information and permission-based follow-up. And I think that all sums it up. I mean, that is exactly what it's really all about, is a conversation.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about for sale by owners and this whole market is that it's a never ending stream of new leads coming to you every week. So there's just a never ending group of people that are being presented to you that you're just going to start having conversations with. And so there's never a time when you wake up in the morning and be like, I don't have any leads. You have a bunch of leads all the time. And that's what's exciting to me about it, and how we operate. So when we're talking about the book, will there be a third book, I guess is my question, Joe.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's a great question. I do want to do actually Jim, I think so I look at it now. When I look back at the content, we've got 2 books out. We've got somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, 25, 26 different episodes, which is 2 full years worth of content. And we've covered a lot. I would say there's going to be a third book. I have some of the ideas I was thinking of is doing going more into some of these basic building blocks of real estate, like Fsbos and expires, and going more in depth with something like that. I really feel that that's something that I'd like to go into, or possibly taking something like sales training process and doing something like that. We're tossing around some ideas, with that as well. You want some. It's always great to go specific into real estate, but some of these things can really cross, different verticals as well. I mean, sales is sales. When you're doing stuff. I mean, whether I'm selling real estate or I'm selling, multi-million-dollar pieces of electronics equipment. I still got to make contact. I got to, call people up on the phone who don't even know I exist, make appointments, establish rapport, build value in my product or my company, and I need to be able to close them. And so that's something that I'm looking into. But it's either that, Jim, or maybe in a murder mystery or something like that. I don't know. There's all kinds of ideas. Actually, a buddy of mine is a Chicago police officer, and I said, man, if I could ride along with you for like 2 months, I'd probably have like 2 years worth of books, man. I'd be like, it's crazy. So yes, I'm definitely, I love to write. It's one of my passions. I've actually written 3 books. So I've done the 2 secrets books. My first book came out in 2008. It's called The Foreclosure Revolution. It's all about buying foreclosure. So taking that idea that I just mentioned about saying, hey, going more in depth like Fsbos or expires. That's what I did with the foreclosure book. It was how to find foreclosures, how to buy foreclosure. And I say foreclosure, I'm talking pre-foreclosures. So, how to find a house that has gone into foreclosure. They're in the pre-foreclosure process. They've been served their papers. Because to me, just like Fsbo, I applied the same techniques to that as I did my Fsbo business. Was you got to be, everybody wants to send letters. I can help you. I can do this. Some people might go to the courthouse to try to buy the property at an auction, but they haven't seen the inside of it. That's always scary. Some might say, oh, I'll buy them as an REO property. For me, it was always like, if I can get in the door before it goes up for the sheriff's sale auction, get to talk to the owner. As a realtor, I can offer them some options. I can list the house, sell it at retail price. If they don't have the time because the auction's coming up in a couple of weeks, I can offer them, make an offer on their property, bring in an investor to buy it. And that's kind of like the whole approach. Same type of thing.
A couple questions about that, Joe. Yeah. So how did you find, because we've been preaching the pre-foreclosure strategy as well to our coaching students, but I'm curious, what was your strategy for finding these people?
So back in the day, what I would do is we used to get these. This was in Cook County, Illinois, DuPage County, Illinois, so right around the Chicago area. What we would do is I started off by just buying these lists from people who would actually go to the courthouses, would actually research all of the foreclosure files, and every state's different. So in Illinois, they're in the Chancery division in the courthouse. In some states, they're in the Civil division. So I'd pay somebody to do this. I'd buy these lists, and these lists would show here's the person, here's the mortgage, here's when they got the mortgage, here's how much they owe on it, here's the liens on the property. So this is where like being a realtor really comes into play, because you might have a loan that was taken out, 3 years ago, And, they might have only, and it says, oh, it's only 3 years old. There's not much equity. But what you might not know is maybe it was a refi. And so being a realtor, you'd look at it and say, oh, they only owe this much money. Well, the value is actually a lot more. This is a really good deal. So we used, using my realtor expertise to focus on areas that I knew, but I'd get the list from there. And then as I started expanding, as I started selling programs and doing talks on it, as a matter of fact, the house I'm in right now is actually a property that I had purchased through a foreclosure. So that was like, that's one of the things is that you go in and you say, hey, I've got people would say, show me how to do it. We'd go down to wherever they hire us. They'd fly us out there. We'd go to the courthouse with them. We did our research. And that book, Foreclosure Revolution, actually has all 50 states and how to look them up, where to look them up. And you go in there and we find these pre-foreclosures. We'd be able to look in the files, and now everything's online. So you can see when is there an auction scheduled? How much they owe? What liens are on the property? And that's invaluable information. And then
did you go to the door or did you call them?
Yeah, I actually went to the door. Back then, I mean, it's like getting a phone number wasn't as easy to get maybe as it is today. But what I would do is I would actually go to the door. And what I would do is I'd knock on the door, take 2 steps back, just not knowing. But I did these information flyers, just like you had. Like if I help somebody, I got all this out of Realtor magazine. Craig Proctor. Remember Craig? Craig Proctor. Yeah. Craig Proctor. So I use Craig Proctor technique, where Craig Proctor would do like an editorial style advertisement. And I think about Brian Moses. I don't know if you remember the Brian Moses story. Oh, here's a realtor who he owed $300,000 to the IRS, and now he's making $2 million a year. So I looked at that when I first read it, I thought it was an actual article. And Proctor was a master marketer, so I started saying, what if I could do that? What if I actually do help somebody? Can make like an editorial style like advertisement, but it's an actual letter, and then I could just drop that off at the door. So I started doing that, and I started getting callbacks. Hey, you helped this person. I love that, how you were able to help them. And then when I got the callbacks, I would go to the property and do the same type of thing like a Fsbo. I would walk in, just build rapport, but take pictures, take notes, take measurements, whatever I needed to do. And then once I had that information, I could go back and then say, okay, here's the condition the property's in, talk to my contractors, what do we need to do? And then from there, we'd be able to make them an offer on it.
Nice. Love it. Were you financing these with your own money, or did you have other people investing?
So some of them I financed with my own money. And then what I would really allow me to scale was to be able to partner up with some investors. And so back in the early 2000s, money was pretty easy. And also being in Chicago, you had a lot of access to futures traders, who always like to they always like to put money into all different kinds of stuff. So we were like by the Chicago Board Options Exchange. And so I would say, hey, you know what? Got to know a couple people. Then they would refer me to other people. And before you know it, getting the money was the easy part. The hard part for me was, how do I get this out there fast enough? Because there were other people doing it. And, so that was actually the hardest part back then. Today, the approach I take today is, I pick an area that I like to have an investment property in, whether it be a vacation rental or it be a rental, just something I like to rent out, something where I could see myself, hey, I could live there one day. And then so it's a smaller area, but when these foreclosures come up, just using the same techniques. One of the things I found, Jim, is that, and I got this by talking to Linda McKissick. She's also in the book with her, how she did it. The people that are in distress, they're having issues. A lot of them are embarrassed. They don't want to talk. They're embarrassed to talk about it with their own families because maybe it was something they did that got them in that situation, that, whether it be an addiction or anything of some sort. They'd much rather talk to a stranger, who's a professional, about their problems, than talk to family members, because they don't want the stigma, they don't want the embarrassment. So I'd be sitting down, these people would be pouring their hearts out to me, telling me about everything that's going on. And then, I'd have to reel them back in and say, look, here's the reality. This is what the options that you have. What do you want to do? And that's how I was able to get so many more deals than a lot of the other people, because they were sending letters out, they were sending emails out, but really you got to get the FaceTime with people. So that was the key.
Wow. Fascinating. I love it. That's really good stuff. So let's talk just for a minute as we kind of wrap up here, because in your role at Homes.com, I mean, what are some of the products and services you guys are offering to agents to help them like lead generate? And,
Yeah. So, I mentioned one of them. So we have a zip code based product you've probably seen on many of the other portals as well, where it's something where somebody's interested. I'm interested in a listing. I can go on I can click on the listing to the listing detail page, fill out a form, and then that lead would go to people who own that zip code. What's nice about that one is that we don't, rotate 20 different people through there. We only have 3 full positions per zip code. So it does create more opportunities on there. And so that's nice. We also give seller leads out from there too. We have a whole entire section on homes.com dedicated to home values. So when somebody comes on homes.com and says, what's my home worth? We don't profess to be the experts there, because we're not. Realtors are the experts. So what we do is say, look, here's what's been selling in your area, but hey, if you want a detailed CMA, fill out this form. They fill it out. And if the agents who have that zip code would get that particular lead. So we get buyer and seller leads out. That's called Local Connect. We also have ways that we also offer websites. We've been doing websites for years. We've powered some of the largest national brands with their websites for years. We do that. We also have advertising products through, if I want to sponsor a city, if I want to have a big presence in a city where I want my ad to show up with my listings, or a call to action, if I want to generate more seller leads or buyer leads, I can customize my call to action. The cool thing about this particular product, it's called City Sponsor, is that it shows up native. It's a native ad. It looks like a regular tile, like a listing. And if most of the time it does indeed have your listings on there, but if you don't have any listings, you can put a call to action. So it's right there. People don't get banner blindness from it. They're looking at it and they see it. In that case, you can actually own 100% of a city, which is great. And then, and really we do SEO. We do SEO services, social media support, social media services. We buy some Facebook ads for people as well. So a lot of it centers around lead generation. But really our approach, how we stand out from our competition, because you'd say, well, is that like Zillow? Is that like Realtor? How we stand out is we do take this holistic approach where it's not just pick a zip code and that's it. It's like we do zip codes. We do really good quality websites. We do a lot of branding products where you can get your name out there in your area. And then, of course, we do SEO services, which gives you exclusive leads to your own website, and then social media services as well. A lot of these guys don't do that because it does take a lot more customized work, but we're proud to do that.
Nice. Okay. All right, Joe, where can people find you after the summit?
Yeah, so they can find me. So social media, most of my social handles are at Joe Sesso, or on Facebook, it's facebook.com/joe.sesso. You can also reach me by email, joe@homes.com. And I look forward to having you guys reach out to me. Would love to connect and, talk to you. Definitely love to have these type of conversations, Jim. These are a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on our program. Make sure you go out and buy the book, Secrets of Top Selling Agents. What's the tagline at the end of that? Secrets of Top Selling Agents, Habits, Tactics, and Mindsets of Real Estate Super Producers. Love it. Okay, man. Thank you so much, Joe. Thanks for being on the program.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Appreciate it.